Welcome to a Telltale Books video. I'm Greg, and I'm going to continue my Poul Anderson series covering everything I can get my hands on in order of publication. And with this video, I am up to his third published story, titled Genius. Genius was published in Astounding Science Fiction in December of 1948. So, published with John W. Campbell, and so far that's where he's published all of his stories, is in Astounding. And it's a novelette length story, so not really long, but not a short story either. So he's able to get a little deeper into things than you could with just a short story. But this is a very early work by Anderson, only his third published work. So we're really early in his career, but he's already doing some really interesting things. In Genius, you have a group called the Psychotechnic Foundation that has set up a series of planets that they then seeded with humans who basically had their memories wiped, putting them kind of back to the beginning, where they have to figure everything out and have to develop their society and discover all the sciences, discover the universe, discover who they are. They have to go through all of that. They have to build their whole civilization. And so this Psychotechnic Foundation is doing this. And on number 17, Station 17, they purposely seeded this planet with people who were all geniuses. Nobody below, like, I don't know, 170 IQ or something. I forget. But they're all genius level people that were seated on this planet, and they wanted to see what happens. Well, the Psychotechnic Foundation is governed by a galactic empire, which maintains control over the people, maintains control over people's thinking, and maintains the status quo throughout the empire. They don't allow any really new original ideas to develop in the empire, because that might subvert the empire's authority. And they have a war fleet, some of whom are sent out to check on these seeded planets and make sure nothing's developing that could disrupt the empire. And if they see something that develops like that, they destroy all the life on the planet. Okay, so a general is sent to Station 17 to check up on things, find out where the Psychotechnic Foundation is at with this experiment. They've had 1,500 years, or they've had 1,500 years for things to develop. And Station 17 is already at the point where they're developing rocketry. 1,500 years. They've gone from knowing nothing and having no civilization. They've developed a civilization, built cities, and they're doing experiments with rocket technology. That's why the empire is concerned here, that these people may be too brilliant and would be a problem for the empire. I'll stop at that. There's a lot of really interesting things going on here. it's an early work for Anderson, so I think he could be um, I think he could be forgiven for borrowing way too heavily on Isaac Asimov's Foundation. This story is almost like a rewriting of the Foundation. I mean, instead of psychohistory, you have the psychotechnic foundation, which is all about the psychology of studying the psychology of history and planning for how to inject, um, how to get the empire from being static, how to invigorate the empire so it'll be strong into the future. Very much like Harry Seldon, and the stations are the experiments of the foundations, very much like the foundation worlds of Harry Seldon that he founded. Um, the parallels are too close to believe that, and this is published right in Astounding Stories. The parallels here are too close to believe that Anderson wasn't drawing upon Asimov's Foundation and thinking about it and thinking about this unique situation that might develop, thinking about how it might be done differently, how it might be handled differently, how the story could be handled differently. And I think he did a really good job. The only downside of this story is if you're the sort of person who believes writers should show, not tell, this story is 90% tell with just a little bit of show at the end. Um, about 90% of the story is a conversation between the general and the guy who's leading Station 17, um, the research project. So, from that standpoint of the way people think today that stories should be written, this story completely violates it. But you know what? Anderson pulls it off. Um, the explanations, once you get to the end of the story, you realize that why Anderson did this was purposeful, that he had a reason to write the story this way. And it makes sense at that point. It's sad you got to kind of push through something where you're going, man, they're just, telling the whole thing. They should get some action going, but they don't. Um, but there's a reason for that. And if I tell you, I'll spoil the whole story for you. So I'm keeping my mouth shut about that. Uh, just trust me, Anderson knew what he was doing and he wrote a very good story. I'm not giving this one top tail because it's not quite there, but I do recommend it. I think it is an excellent story. And it's a very interesting contrast to Foundation, that for those of you that think Foundation could have stronger characterization and could have a better storyline, um, I think Anderson delivers at least some of that. Maybe not everything you would wish for, but definitely some of what you might wish would be in Asimov's Foundation is to be found here. So I really do think Anderson was looking at Asimov's Foundation and really thinking about it and thinking about how he could do a new story, his own story, and kind of rewrite Foundation. The one thing that throws me with this story is that Poul Anderson wrote a whole series of stories about a psychotechnic league. Unfortunately, I really haven't read much of the Psychotechnic League stories, so I don't know. According to the Internet Science Fiction Database, Genius and the Psychotechnic Foundation are not part of the Psychotechnic League. But it sounds to me very much like this story was probably a precursor to the Psychotechnic League stories, because all the Psychotechnic League stories come after this story. So this could have been like a initial idea about that, and then he went and made some changes and did the Psychotechnic League as its own series That does not include this story. Um, Not sure. We'll find out as we read forward with Poul Anderson. The Psychotechnic League stories do get started fairly early, so it won't be long before we get to the first of those. But this story, according to all the sources that I'm looking at, is not actually a Psychotechnic League story. So, um, I read Genius. Like I say, it originally appeared in the December 1948 issue of Astounding, which is in the mail on its way to me. I found a copy and bought it, but it didn't get here early enough for when I wanted to schedule the video. So probably a week to 2 weeks after this video is live, I will receive my copy of that issue of Astounding, which is a really good one. And actually, the cover is for the story Genius. So I'm going to put that up on screen here. I didn't care for the black and white artwork inside the magazine because I did see it as a free PDF that I found. And I didn't care for the black and white artwork inside, so I'm not going to put those up. But the cover artwork is pretty decent, and I will put that up for you. I forget who did the cover artwork. I think it's Paul Orban, if I'm not mistaken, who did quite a bit of work for Astounding in the late 40s, early 50s. But anyway, where I read the story Genius, and this is the first time I've ever read this story, by the way. I've read a lot of Poul Anderson, but I've never read this one before. This is new to me, but it's in this book, Call Me Joe, Volume 1 of the collected short works of Poul Anderson, published by Nesfa Press, one of my favorite publishers. I really love their books, and I'm starting to build a pretty good collection of their books in my library. This is the only one of this series of the collected works of Poul Anderson that I have. There's quite a few, 8 or 9 volumes in the whole series. I do intend to get them all. They'll be essential to me going through all of Poul Anderson's short works. So I really need to get them, but for now I just have this one, and this one is my Bible for what I'm doing right now. Very good art, very good book, very, very good illustration for the story Call Me Joe, painted by the great Bob Eggleton. So, love the book. And of course, that book is available brand new from Nesfa Press. Go to their website, NESFA Press. Google that and you'll come up with their website, and you can go there and you can buy the whole series if you want. They're brand new books. So this is in print. Genius is in print. Or, of course, you can look for the free PDF of Astounding Stories or Astounding Science Fiction for December 1948 online, I believe archive.org. Or, of course, you can do like I did and go to the used sources and find a copy of the actual magazine and buy it. And I think there was one other Poul Anderson collection early on in his career that the story was collected. And other than that, this story hasn't been anthologized or collected a whole lot, which is sad because it's a good story. Like I say, it's not a great story. It is a very good story, though. And so, have you read Genius by Poul Anderson? Leave your comments. I'd like to hear what you think about the story and what you think about Poul Anderson in general, if you have thoughts about that or anecdotes you want to relate about him, met him at a convention or something. I love to hear stuff like that. I don't get out ever, so I've never been to any conventions except the one I worked for TSR, and otherwise I'm totally green as far as conventions go, and that's mainly because where I live, there aren't any. So I'd have to travel a distance to go to any conventions, which has always sucked. Anyway, the next Poul Anderson story was published in May 1949 and is titled Prophecy. And once again, it's going to be in this book. Not part of any series, only a short story. I hope you'll come back and join me for the video talking about that story. And until then, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Help us out here. Help us to grow. Help us to get these things seen. And help us to generate a whole conversation about all the great older literature that we talk about here in Telltale Books. I want other people telling us their ideas about this literature.